show people how it feels to be in that space. Like I'm out here in Richmond Park, and if I was just focusing on the deer, then I'd miss half of what's going on, and the hay fever in the air and things like that. Like make people feel something when they're watching what you're doing, and when they're seeing a photo. Learn how to find things that separate your photos from everyone else's. Alrighty, hopefully that works. Alright, we're back again. Back again in the old Richie P. So I ended up growing a Formula One team's TikTok to 2.5 plus million. I grew Fernando Alonso's TikTok to 2.5 million. Got him public figure of the year. So I've done this. I know what it takes. I know what's required to get there. I've done the hiring before as well, so I know what these teams are looking for. So this is my guide on how I would become an F1 content creator. So the thing is with all those numbers and all those kind of accolades is that none of that started with the intention of getting into F1. I started it because I just wanted to make really cool stuff, really cool content, different kinds of storytelling, memes, videos, vibey edits. That's all I wanted to do. It's just that Formula One became my specialty and where I was able to kind of lean into that side of myself. Now, unfortunately, I can't be the one to hold your hand to the F1 teams and get you into the rooms and, try and get you the interviews and get you the job. But what I can do is set you up with as much information as I can possibly give to allow you to put yourself in the best position possible so that you can get into these rooms and try and get these jobs. So if you were to ask me where to start on this journey of trying to get into Formula One as a content creator, I'd start with build the portfolio of work before you need it. So what does that mean? That means going out on your own and finding different things that you can shoot that are somewhat adjacent or relevant to the industry that you're trying to get into. So everyone in automotive thinks that it's just about the cars and, the drivers, but there's so much more to it. There's people, there's the teams, there's the mechanics, there's the environment. There's so many different strands that you can pull on within these spaces. And, if you just start getting out there and putting in the effort into these different kind of categories and just building out your body of work, then eventually you can start to hone in on a portfolio that really represents your work, and then and then you can start to give that to brands and give that to teams that are within these spaces. And, you don't just start in F1, you kind of build your way into it. Mine started through automotive and other aspects of storytelling, so through the hospitality side of Formula One, and then that led me into the actual racing side with the Formula One team. And for me, this started years ago when I went to my first ever Cars and Coffee. I just wanted to go along, bring my camera, go meet some people, see some cool cars, and then through taking photos, putting a bit of effort, someone from the event actually reached out afterwards and said, "Hey, look, I love your work, I love what you do. Do you want to come and film my car?" And then that is eventually what led to my next shoot, which is then what led me to my next shoot. And all through referrals, I ended up getting my first ever opportunity to take that leap into motorsport. So the more you can do by yourself, by just going out to different events, and there's, especially during the summer, there's so many different cars and coffees and different things you can turn up to with cameras, and just go meet people, speak to people, and just shoot as much as you can, and then share that one. It goes so much further than you think. So there's another element to this, and that's proactivity. No one's going to hand you this work, and ultimately you're going to have to go and make those opportunities. So kind of building on this Cars and Coffee thing, it's also reaching out to people and saying that this is what you're able to do. Portfolio of work that you will have built through turning up to these events. They'll see exactly what you do. And, if the work's good enough, then people will turn around and say "Hey, yeah, we'd love to get involved, or love to have you on a shoot." It's just the level of proactivity shows that you have initiative and a willingness to kind of get out there and put yourself out there and, really push to go beyond just expecting people to come to you. You also have to make these opportunities happen for yourself. And that'll only come about by whether it's a DM, email, messaging people. Don't go into it asking for something. Just let people know that you're available, and if they have anything, come to mind. And often it doesn't happen straight away, but people will remember that time that you reached out to them, and they'll be like, "Oh, I remember when this person reached out to me," and then they'll actually think of you. And if your work is good enough, as I said before, they'll probably try and get you in. And for me, that level of proactivity was when I saw one of my friends had reposted an Instagram story about an F1 job. I then screenshotted it, DM'd the agency that had put up the job and said, "Hey, look, I'm going to be at the Grand Prix, would love to meet you." I wasn't going to be at that Grand Prix, so I drove down 10 hours from Sydney just to go have a 15-minute meeting to say that I would love the job. I would love to get involved. And because I had that body of work, I'd already worked with automotive brands in Australia. I'd done, plenty of campaigns. My photos had been featured on all these international car automakers pages. And so that when I was able to, send that DM, they could see that I had the body of work that they were looking for to then be able to justify the meeting. And so that work that I'd put in beforehand, while I would have done it anyway, was probably the most critical thing that got my foot in the door with that agency. The one thing as well that I think, that kind of ties all of this together in those early stages is like, you should put in a disproportionate amount of effort to probably what you're going to get out in that immediate instance, because that effort that you put in the short term will only benefit you so much further down the line, because you are willing to go above and beyond at every single point. Formula One is literally the pinnacle of motorsport. You have so many people wanting to compete to get into this space that you're going to be going up against a million other people just like you. So if you're not putting in the effort and putting in those little wins that will get you, to stick out and stand out and, having your own personal style, having a bit of a following, like all these things make a really big difference, especially nowadays, because it is such a highly contested space. And, another one is just go out and network in other aspects of motorsports. Motorsport isn't just Formula One. There's feeder series, you've got go-karting, you've got other racing series, whether it's, WEC, GT2, GT3, there's a million and one different places you can start. The best thing you can do is just go and see what it's like on the ground and start meeting people, because, chances are some of these kids are on journeys that you don't know where they're going to end up. And if you take a good photo and they follow you back and they see your work, like it's those little connections along the way that you can build that really kind of compound over time, because your name will start to be out there because you were turning up when not everyone was trying. Basically, it's like everyone else is going straight to Formula One and being like, hey, I take a good photo, let me in. There's a million and one other people out there like that. But if you can build from the ground up with people that, they appreciate that you're probably learning, and, they're not going to be expecting the top tier level that's required at Formula One. And that's a good thing. Use that to your advantage and experiment and do things differently, because again, that will really separate you and help you build up the skills to get to Formula One. So I guess moving on beyond kind of, I guess the basic like portfolio network, there's like, I guess basic hard skills that you need, like for photography and video specifically. Like the more you can get out and shoot and learn the basic skills of, God, it's going to sound obvious, but like shutter speeds, 180 degree shutter rule. You've got, color grading log footage. You've got, just basic stuff like exposure, all those sorts of things. The more you can master that earlier on, the better you'll set up to be when you get to really time critical positions. Like Formula One, you have to be churning out edits at a ridiculous pace, both for photo and video. Now, my recommendation is to learn both. It makes you infinitely more valuable, especially within teams, because teams kind of need people that are able to do multiple different things. And while there's a lot of opinions on, I guess going into these jobs and having one skill set, I think the people that are able to kind of just rip in and do as many different things and, push beyond just the one element, because yes, you can have specialty. Yes, you can be a photographer. Yes, you can be a videographer. You'd probably end up working in a media agency or a production agency or those sorts of companies. But if you specifically want to get into F1 for content creation and being a content creator, doing photo and video will help you so much more than anything else. And, learn, it sounds again like super obvious and super basic, but learn color grading, learn how to edit in Lightroom, and learn how to do it really fucking well and really fucking fast. Yeah, the pace of that place is just insane. So you have to be able to turn stuff around in the most critical times. Technical craft. I guess something super important to add to that as well is that even though you're editing quickly, you're still editing really high quality stuff. You don't want to be trading off quality for speed, because unfortunately, And also, fortunately, I guess, is that you have the whole of motorsport watching you. If there's a mistake in your video, and, you know, I've been a victim to this before, and everyone in the space has, it will get picked up, people will notice, and people will say it. So the less mistakes you make earlier on, the better you hone that craft, the less you'll make when the time is critical. And yeah, when it happens, you'll know it and you'll kick yourself because, you know, these channels have however many millions of people following them, and then they see and notice that one mistake, you'll be kicking yourself for it. So another thing that kind of ties into all of this is getting your workflow correct at speed, or like setting your workflow up for speed. So what does that mean? That means having your color grading lined up ahead of time so that you can just drop in your, in theory, beautifully exposed footage straight away, and it will look amazing as soon as you put it on the timeline. Another one is audios and like trends. Have those locked in before a race weekend. The best thing you can do is just have an entire bank of different sounds, songs, vibes, whatever you want to have that in, have that ready to go before you get on the ground. And also, there's some things that I don't think should be gate kept, but your trends and your audios, gatekeep that shit, because your style, your eye, what you see, what you find is ultimately going to be what is the separator from other people in this highly competitive space. So if you found a good audio that no one's used, hold on to it, but use it as quick as possible because someone will find it. So being able to find the right track that fits your vibe, that, you know, is either up and coming or hasn't been used yet in the space, hold on to it, but use it at pace. And, you know, if you want to get better at these skills, like, set a timer. Like, you have to make an edit happen within, sometimes as something's happened, you need to run back to your computer and get that out within 5 minutes. Like, there's been edits that I've done, whether it's a moment with a driver, whether it's a moment with a car, there's just things that are so time sensitive that if you fluffing with transfers, with finding the right songs, with finding the right color grading, if you don't have that set up and ready to go, you're holding up you can basically cost your team or who you're working for the moment that you were hired to get. And if someone else in another team or another agency gets that moment, your team's going to look at you and be like, why didn't we get that first? So the more that you can do to get the best possible outcome for that moment as fast as possible, then the better it'll be. So, you know, edit to a timer and be like, all right, I'm going to get this 5-shot piece out in 5 minutes, like literally that fast. And the more you can do that and kind of hone in on that, and then once you start introducing music and different effects, like, you can be creative with it, and the more you can do that, the better. Those are the things that separates it. Of if you have 10 people shooting the same moment and you've turned out a far more creative edit within the same period of time as all these other people that have just turned on the camera, you are going to get noticed. And those exact sort of skills are what really built me up and got my name out there in the first place. And then, so moving on from those harder skills, I guess these are more just kind of like creative, call it creative execution or creative differentiators, maybe is the right way to put it. But learn how to edit to not just the beat, but also find the pacing of the song beyond that. So, you know, songs speed up, songs slow down, you have melodies, you can catch different notes, you can use lyrics, like, find other ways of editing to a song that isn't just using the beat, because that's, again, just another one of those little detail things that it helps in edit flow that doesn't just look like dum, 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 dum. Because, you know, editing to a beat is kind of the first thing that you learn when you're getting into this space. So you'll see it as the basic thing that most people in the space will do. And then as soon as I see an edit that I feel like it's got flow, it feels different, and, you know, if you want a video that breaks that down and what that looks like, I can do that. But it's just finding a way of telling that story beyond just using a beat. Another one that I guess is a harder one to articulate, but also very important, is create your own style. I think one thing that went a long way back when I was doing my edits was that my style kind of became associated with me, and that editing style of, you know, TikTok trends that were turned into edits, that very much in the Formula One space especially was something that I was able to bring into the space. And, you know, other teams kind of caught on eventually, but that was the one thing that made people notice, and then they wanted to seek out who was making these edits, and then I became associated with that style of edit. So that is like a really important thing that even still holds up today. Just finding your style and finding, your twist on even photography as well. Like my grading that a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but some people would consider quite over edited, but I think that was my signature style that helped to separate Aston Martin, especially at the beginning, from the rest of the teams on the grid as well. Another one as well, something that kind of filters out from that, is learning how to read a room differently to everyone else around you. A lot of the people in this space are very much focused on the subject. Now, that's not a bad thing, but what you'll find is that so many photographers and videographers are all just shooting the same thing, or everything just kind of blends into one. And for 90% of the photographers that you see like on the grid or in the space, you wouldn't be able to tell a minute difference of like who shot what. It's those ones that know how to kind of take a step back in the moment and be like, all right, what angle, what shot am I trying to get here that isn't just shoving myself in front of everyone else and trying to be the person at the front, because honestly, they're the most annoying people in the space and you don't want to be that, but also you'll just fall into the category of everyone else. So learn how to read a room, learn how to turn up and, pick things that, show people how it feels to be in that space. Like I'm out here in Richmond Park and, if I was just focusing on the deer, then I'd miss half of what's going on and, the hay fever in the air and things like that. Like, make people feel something when they're watching what you're doing and when they're seeing a photo. Learn how to find things that separate your photos from everyone else's. And also that can be in the editing. It's like you can take all that footage and find a way to make it seem different, but that's the thing of just approach things differently, look the other way, because often you'll find things that most people weren't seeing and you'll get the better shot for it. There's a couple of, coming to the last, one more thing that I think is a really important point to make throughout this entire process. And this is something that, when I was hiring for people and trying to get people in the space, that just became the biggest sticking point for so many different reasons. But this is like the one line that I will say to 1,000,001 people is focus on being creative, not being a creator. Now, the best way to articulate that is that so many people want to call themselves a creator, but no one actually does anything creative. And to the point earlier of being like, figure out how to read a room, how to see things differently, how to edit music differently, how to find different trends. Like those are the things that make you creative. The people that just turn up, there's been quite a long guide and there's probably 1,000,001 things here that I can break down more and more, but the probably most important part of all this is time management. The main thing in this, why that is so important amongst anything, is that F1 waits for no one. A, it's rude to be late, but B, the schedules that drivers, team members, the entire sport is on is insane, and it will not wait for you. If you're not there 5 minutes early, you're already late. Take that and apply that to your entire life, because that will get you so much further. But if you can be the reliable resource on the ground that is there, ready to go, you're not scrambling. It's not to say that things don't happen, but you should never be the reason that you are late whatsoever. I don't think I was ever late for a team transfer. I'd never missed a bus. I'd never missed a flight. You always just want to be there in time so that people know that they can rely on you, and that will help your reputation more than any creative edit that you could ever imagine. Is just you being able to show up and get things done right. So yeah, I guess that's a bit of a wrap on my long-winded guide to how I'd become a content creator in F1. There's probably other things of like identifying trends, picking your style, what else, photography, videography, just as a general, like how to do those things, which, I'd love to break down in other videos, but at least for now, I just wanted to give you this overall guide to the space and kind of set you up. And I know I'm not speaking to many people here, and this is very much the start of this YouTube journey, but if I can help one person hone in on their craft and start that journey towards F1, then this is entirely worth doing, because I'm here to share what I've learned and here to, bring it to the rest of the world. And I feel like I've been in this unique space where I was able to be that person that, brought Fernando Alonso on TikTok and same with Aston Martin and getting to build out these big brands and being a pivotal part in that space is a really special opportunity. So I want to bring that to other people, and that's why I'm here. So yeah, important point to make throughout this entire process. And this is something that, man, when I was hiring for people and trying to get people in the space, that just became the biggest sticking point for so many different reasons. But this is like the one line that I will say to 1,000,001 people is focus on being creative, not being a creator. Now, the best way to articulate that is that so many people want to call themselves a creator, but no one actually does anything creative. And to the point earlier of being like, figure out how to read a room, how to see things differently, how to edit music differently, how to find different trends. Like, those are the things that make you creative. The people that just turn up to go take the same photo of it as everyone else just to say that they work in Formula One, they normally get snuffed out pretty quickly and normally don't end up getting the job because they're too keen. You never want to be the keen bean. Go in, you're allowed to have an interest in something, and that's totally fine, but don't say that you're just there to work in F1, because that's normally not what they're looking for. They're looking for people that do the job well, do it differently, and, you know, can produce amazing results. They're not just wanting someone who wants to turn up with a camera and take selfies and be in the room and be seen. That's not what is going to get you further in that world. So yeah, that's kind of like my closing bit of advice, I guess, is focus on being creative, not being a creator. So I guess that's probably more of an indicator of becoming an in-house creator. There's the freelance side, which I'll probably break down in another video, but I hope this has been helpful. I'm going to leave you with a little edit of where I'm sitting in Richmond Park, and yeah, I guess I'll catch you on the next video. That's 1 week of posting every day. I'll see you tomorrow. And if any of you are interested in the work that I've done, it's Jimmy's Life on Instagram and TikTok. I'll catch you there.
Vou te contar, os olhos já não podem ver coisas que só o coração pode entender. Fundamental é mesmo amor, é impossível ser feliz sozinho. O resto é mar, é tudo que eu não sei contar. São coisas lindas que eu tenho pra te dar. Fundamental é mesmo amor, é impossível ser feliz sozinho.